Welcome back to the Resolution Room. Whether you're navigating conflict in your relationships, your work, or within yourself, you're in the right place. Let's step into the room. All right, today's conversation is about what happens when survival teaches us to distrust ourselves. We talk often about conflict between people, but sometimes the deepest conflict is internal. The tension between what we feel and what we've been taught we're allowed to feel can make all the difference. And today's guest is going to lead us all through the process. So, can you please introduce yourself, Olivia?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Olivia Fish. I have been in the coaching industry for over 15 years. Been closer to 20 now than 15. It's so surprising how time flies by. And I love this topic that you brought up today. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. So, let's just talk about how we got to this point, like a little bit about your background, maybe even some training or just early experiences that made you even want to go into this line of work.
Yeah, thank you for that, setting me up here. I have been in this work for a long time, mostly because I grew up in an environment early on where I was seeing so much that people were giving away their sovereignty. We're essentially in a space where people were handing over their power to other people to tell them how to live, be, where to put their money, who to marry. And that was the environment that I actually grew up in. And so I think it's no coincidence that my life work has really been about really taking over and understanding how important it is to own your own power. Because when you don't, someone else definitely will. So the work I've been doing since I got out of college, I have my master's degree in exercise science and I'm a performance enhancement specialist as well. So I started my career as a coach working with athletes to get them ready for game day,
Interesting.
physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, so that when the stakes are high, you know how to regulate your body, your nervous system, so that you can perform at your best. And I've translated that to now work with executives, to working with high performance people across every sector. So, actors, musicians, hosts, people in the spotlight a lot. It's really all of the same thing at the end of the day is can you actually meet the moment when the stakes are high, when it matters to regulate your nervous system enough to not go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flock, and actually just show up with presence and as your best self. So I love the work I do because it keeps me accountable. I like to really make sure that I am showing up the best that I can and doing my part in this world. It's so chaotic at times. And so it's so easy for me to want to retreat and hide and not show up. And so this work actually just forces me to make sure I stay on my own game of life. So I've written 2 books. I'm an author. I love writing. I am a coach and I work with couples and individuals as well as teams. And I love doing facilitation and workshops as well. So when I'm not here in San Francisco taking care of my baby girl who's 8 years old and, being a wife and a mama, I go off and travel and do retreats and workshops and things like that. So that's a little bit of a backstory.
Thank you so much. And so, as we dive into this conversation, let's start at the basics. So, when you say the phrase self abandonment, what does that actually look like in everyday life?
Yeah. I think that there's often when I talk to my clients or people who want to get support from me, they often say, there's a better version of myself living inside of me, and I'm just trying to access her. I'm just trying to access him. I know I can be showing up better. So many of us know what we need to be doing because it's not a lack of information. I have every single thing that I need right in here. I
Exactly.
can pull it up in a second and I can have the exact information that I need. And we have it right here, usually an arm's distance away. So there are phases, though, for change to actually occur so that our baseline is elevated. So, of course, we need the right information, but then we actually need to be showing up for the hard thing. We need to be practicing the skill set that we know is correct. And when we don't practice that skill set, so when we know better but we can't do better, we are feeling like we're in self-abandonment. And we call that in my coaching space awareness hell. Hopefully that's okay to say here. But
Yeah.
you're essentially just like you're aware of everything, your patterns, your parts, what you need to be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, what you want to be doing, and yet you can't quite do it. You're not able to show up for it. And so we have to recognize that information is not enough. Then you have to practice. And I call this building your muscle of pride. In the personal development world, it's called transformation, right? Practicing the thing that you know you need to be doing. And because I have an athletic background, I call this doing the reps. Can you show up and do the reps you need to? Whether it's, okay, I know I need to be eating better. Can you actually do that today? Can you actually have the breakfast that you know your doctor is asking you to have? Can you eat 3 meals a day that have the right amount of macronutrients or whatever it is that you're trying to show up for? So oftentimes we're not able to do what we know we need to be doing. And that's what I call self betrayal or self abandonment. And my hope is that we can actually take that more seriously and recognize when we don't actually show up for ourselves, it's not just hurting us. We think it's just a me problem, but it's really a we problem and it ripples out. And so if we can really take ownership of the damage that we are doing when we're not showing up for ourselves, I think that people would really recognize, wow, I'm actually a liability. I'm not an asset to the people around me when I am in self betrayal. And that might sound harsh, but I do just think that is the reality of the situation we're in. And when we do that in our homes, and we do that with our families, and we do that in communities, and then we do that on a systematic level, we have the problems that we are facing right now in the world. So that is why I think it's so important to recognize. And this is a question I'm asking myself every day. I'm not here on my high horse. I mean, one of the questions I ask myself every single day is, where am I in self abandonment? Because the answer is I am in self abandonment somewhere. And my job is to find out where it is every single day. And it can be really small. It can be like, oh, I said that out of ego instead of out of love. It can be something subtle and not as tangible as like, did I go to the gym or not? Right. Or did I eat the right food or not? Or did I react with love to my child or not today? Sometimes it's not as tangible. Sometimes you have to get quiet to really understand, where are you in self betrayal? Where are your everyday addictions causing you to abandon yourself? And that ripples out to everyone around you.
That was a beautiful and thorough and thoughtful response, so thank you
I
for
know,
that.
get me
No,
going.
I
I'm
love
just
it.
on
It's
it.
you said all the things. I love when, you're able to answer, like, my next 3 questions all in one. It's perfect.
Awesome. Keep them coming.
And so, in your experience, then, when you're doing this kind of work, because one thing you brought up that's really important that I think we have an overlap is I'm also focused on the messy middle part of the doing. I think we are also on information overload, where it's like there's not one thing you can't just easily find the steps to or how to do it, but the same as having an accountability partner, or like you said, a fitness coach or someone just kind of keeping you on track to actually do the steps every day is where your work becomes paramount, right? And so when you are working with people, how do you find that people confuse things like obedience or performance or hyper responsibility with emotional maturity?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that oftentimes many of my clients, they're really high achievers. So their life looks really beautiful on the outside. There's nothing actually wrong with their life. It's more about how they're being while they're living their life. So it's less about what are you doing, it's about how are you doing that thing. So we have to take both into account. Sometimes I call that the goal line and the soul line. So many of my clients that I work with, they're really good at hitting their goals. They're going after one mountain, after the next mountain, after the next mountain. And they're just like, what mountain do I want to climb now? But then they're lacking the sense of deep satisfaction or meaning, and they don't have a strong reverence for life, and they're missing it. They're missing out. They're just like going after something that is not going to give them the satisfaction that they're actually looking for. So we have to understand that our why matters, but we can look at not just what we're doing, like, did I show up or not? That matters for sure. However, what matters just alongside that, once you are having enough of your basic needs in order, it's going to really look like, how am I being while I do that? So I can wake up today, I can take my daughter to school, I can go to the gym, I can have a nice lunch, and then I can meet you on this beautiful podcast. And I can do all the right things. I can show up on time, I can be present, but it's really about how am I being while I'm doing that. And that goes into more of the what I call the soul line or our soul work, which is really around recognizing that we can't be just doing things without recognizing how we're being while we're doing it. And are we being human medicine to ourselves and others in the process? And that is what brings satisfaction. That's like the yumminess of life. And how can we turn those mundane moments into magical moments? So, to answer your question more specifically, a lot of the time, what I'm doing once we have the right information, the practice and what I call building that muscle of pride and getting those reps in is around recognizing that we all have to turn these mundane moments, these routine moments into magic. And when you're constantly addicted to dopamine spikes in your day through whether it's nicotine or coffee or whatever substance you like to play with, you're actually depriving yourself of a presence that is available that will be able to turn, drinking a really beautiful lemon water, taking that moment and actually being like, wow, I'm so grateful for this water right now, right? We're missing out on taking a walk and seeing the trees and enjoying the coolness of the wind on our face or whatever it is that we have access to. So this is this is really important when I'm doing the work with clients. So yes, we set them up and we keep them accountable to what they're doing for sure, but it's really about what level of consciousness are you doing these things at? And I keep coming back to that for every single thing that we are working on and working towards.
Yeah. Um, the earlier part of your response, you mentioned, everyone, their lives tend to look great on the outside. Um, you know, what is it about human beings where I feel like at this point in history, we see time and time again people with all the riches, with all the things we think we want, still have a lot of the same internal problems that we do. And yet we're still fixated on fame and the money and the things that we know are not going to matter in the end. Why do we still chase that when we know that's not the answer?
Hmm. Well, I think that money does solve for money problems,
Yeah, well, that's
and
true. That part is true.
so I'm not saying like, oh, you don't need to have a beautiful house and have your savings. And if you can reach a sense of financial freedom in your life where you don't have to work, that's fantastic, Like, and it doesn't mean that you don't create impact. I think that actually, for the people that I work with anyway, when they've solved for money, they can make a greater impact, right? And so you're not having to trade that time for money so much. You're not having to do things that you maybe don't want to do or you're doing out of obligation. And so you can do it for quote unquote the right reasons. So I think that I'm not someone who's like, "Oh, that's not important." I'm like, "No, no, no. Like pay your bills, get your money, save up and so that you can really truly be an asset to the people around you." Because I do think that that does matter because that's the world we live in and that's the reality of it. So I do think that that's important. However, it doesn't solve for other things like meaning, satisfaction, peace, joy, presence. Okay, so we have to really recognize that money does solve for money problems, but it doesn't solve for everything. And so for those of us like myself who grew up in an environment where it was not like that, like I didn't grow up with riches and we were like struggling to, pay the bills and things were more limited and it was a big deal if we had strawberries in the house, things like that. So I think that for those of us who didn't have access to um, private lessons in something, or we're able to go to the summer camps. And, we are doing our best to provide that now for our children. And we want them to have what maybe we didn't have or give them access to things that we didn't have. So I think that that's important, in my opinion, still. And this is just, you guys can take this as you will. But what I've come to recognize now that I do have a lot more level of safety, a lot more level of, you know, in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I've elevated to a different space. What I have found is that you can get very easily swept up and forget all of the things that kind of really got you that elevation. So, in my opinion, my elevation just personally here has not been because um I overworked or hustled or was, in my hyperachievement or any of those things that people think. I mean, those I did all of those things, but I was successful despite that. So I think that what really got me success is more of me tapping into wisdom, me being able to be quiet, me meditating every day, me asking myself very important questions every day, like the one I shared with you earlier, like, how will I abandon myself today? Or how did I abandon myself today? And where is my work to do? And what is life asking of me now?
Mhm.
Not so much of what do I want, but what is life asking of me now? So I think that we get to not abandon the playbook of traditional success. I think we get to say yes to that and bring alongside the new playbook alongside it, which is saying, oh, I need to integrate my spiritual intelligence into this as well. Because if I don't, I will end up not having the relationships I want. I will end up feeling depressed, even though I have everything. And I will end up feeling like I didn't really take advantage of this one life I have. So that's my suggestion for people. So we don't need to just say that, all of that doesn't matter. I think it does matter to some extent, but we can't over index on it.
What surprised you most about your own healing process?
Hmm. That's a really great question. I've never been asked before. Well done. Okay, let me see if I can answer that honestly. What has
Take your
surprised
time.
me?
Yeah, take
Yeah, I think that what has surprised me the most is that there are often places and spaces where I felt like there was resolution, I'll call it.
love
So
that
I can
word.
pull your wording in here, right? Where I thought there was this like, "Oh, I get it. Like, I've healed that. I understand that. Okay, how wonderful. Moving on." And what I've recognized is that as I've, like I said, reached new levels of safety, which was what I would call my biggest trigger. Okay, so we're all like little ants walking around. Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I loved? Am I safe? Am I loved? Am I safe? And anytime that there's a threat of not having either safety or love, that's when we're activated. Okay, so my biggest one was, am I safe? And not knowing if I'm safe or not, or anything that touches, oh, maybe I'm not safe, boom, a trigger, right? So I think that the biggest work has been really just recognizing that this all happens in layers, and the more comfort, the more safety, the more financial safety, the more relational safety, the more my physical world is actually quite lovely. What I've recognized is that there's new levels of healing that get to be discovered, because with new levels of safety, then these parts are actually safe to come out and say, hey, I'm actually needing more and I'm needing more and I'm needing more. And then I get to tend to those parts and those patterns in a different way again. So I think that's been one place that's been surprising. And then I'll share another space is that for me personally, information has never been enough. So maybe it's because I'm a kinesthetic learner. So if somebody shares something about a mindset shift or a framework, I'm like, that's nice. But until I put it into practice and it's really embodied, it means really nothing.
Mhm.
And what surprised me is that when I've tried to do it any other way, I have failed miserably. And the embodiment of something. So again, you need the right information, and then you need the practice. You're going to practice that skill set. You're going to demonstrate the thing over and over and over again consistently, and then it needs to become an embodiment. And the more practice you have on the level of the embodiment, bringing the body with you, with what you're doing your best to heal and understand, that's where the transformation happens. And so I think that I've known that, and being able to recognize the importance of it has just been wonderful.
Mhm.
It's been surprising in a wonderful way.
Amazing. And thinking about again the sort of practicality of this, how do people begin rebuilding trust with themselves when they no longer know what their own instincts sound like?
Mm. Yeah, I think that building self-trust is one of the most courageous things we can be doing. And so, first of all, if someone is listening to this and they're feeling like, "Ugh, I don't trust myself," first I just wanna say, "I love you. I get it. I have been there, and so many of us are, and I can be there again tomorrow." Okay? And what I would say to them is just like, take a moment right now first and just rest your hand on your belly or your heart and just take a couple deep breaths and give yourself some compassion and some grace because you have been up to something. You might not have been up to self trust, but you have been up to something. You have been doing something. And if you can give yourself some compassion for what you have been up to, that is a great place to start. It has to start with some self compassion because without this, you got no chance on having the energy needed to then show up for something new. So, my hope for anyone who's listening is first to just put again, it comes back to the body, like give yourself almost like your ideal parent was giving you just so much love and being like, "Hey, it's okay. You have done such a great job. Look at all the things you've done so far. I am so proud of you. Yes, 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 you." And then from there, take a moment to just receive that, like really receive that sense of, oh wow, I have been up to a lot. This is all the things I've been up to. I'm amazing. I'm actually so incredible. I'm so strong. And from there, see what happens. Just see what happens when you can give yourself that that level of love and compassion every day. Even for 7 days, you're going to be, especially if you can do this in front of the mirror, and it's huge. This is actually a practice I have my clients do. So 8 minutes a day, just be in that
That's a
space.
wait, 8 minutes in
Learn.
front of the mirror?
Doesn't have to be in the mirror,
Oh,
but 8 minutes of just like giving yourself that, like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I have. And you're just in that space of letting, I know it seems like a long time, but I've already been talking about this for a minute. Right? So you just give yourself this image of compassion and love from either your highest self or spirit guides or ancestors or an ideal parent or friends throwing you a party being like, "Look, girl, you've done great." Like just be in that space and visualize, just imagine the celebratory energy for you as you're giving and just practice receiving. Because what I have found is that the people who are not trusting themselves, there's a lot of self betrayal happening. It's usually because they're not actually able to receive. They've not been able to receive. It doesn't feel safe to receive. So if you can build the muscle of learning how to receive for 8 minutes a day, 7 days, you'll see something shift for you. It will be beautiful. So that is my hope for everyone who's listening.
challenge accepted.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here doing the exercise while you were saying it, I'm like, "Oh my god, oh my god." That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it feel good, and sometimes it brings emotion, and sometimes it brings up emotions of anger because you didn't get that. Sometimes it brings sadness. Sometimes it brings grief and loss. So just allow it. Just like, yeah, I can handle that. I can handle that. I can handle that. Of course, of course, of course. Like, welcome to the party, grief. Welcome to the party, loss. Like, yes, let's give me all the love I can possibly be receiving in this moment. It takes a lot of courage to do this. I don't want to just throw this out here and pretend like it's not a big deal. I know, and I'll share with you when I first started doing this work, I was just sobbing the whole time because I was not used to receiving. So the whole time I'm just sobbing, thinking about all this love coming to me and all this compassion. And I'm just there crying. I look like I probably was having a meltdown, but really it was just like, wow, this is exactly what I need. So
Yeah.
this is something that I would hope people will practice.
Amazing, See, this is why I have the podcast. I just get free coaching. This is what I'm
Exactly.
really in it for. Just
No, I totally get it. I do the same thing on my podcast. So yeah, you're
yeah,
in good
no,
company.
that's amazing. Thank you for that, and thank you again for sharing a practical exercise and step, for doing that.
Mhm.
So when you talk about emotional safety through the body, like, what does that actually mean or look like?
Yeah. Well, okay, you're sitting somewhere in your house or an office. I'm sitting in my home office. And if I asked you, hey, are you safe? You'd probably be like, yeah, I'm like safe. Like you look around and you're like, yeah, I'm not about to die right now. Like I'm just sitting here and I'm safe. Right.
Yeah.
So you can keep it in the intellect of like, yeah, I'm safe. Like I live in a space that there's no bombs dropping down. Like I'm probably going to live until the end of the day. Technically, I'm safe. However, we as a body, the body, we can, I'm hoping your guests know the book, The Body Keeps Score, right? So your body might not know that you're safe, even though intellectually you know that you're safe. Your body might not feel safe. So I'll give you an example. My husband comes home from a work trip and he goes, "Yay, hi, good to see you. I love you so much. You're amazing." And he gives me a big hug and he wants me to sink into that hug and so that I can receive love from him. In that moment, if my body does not feel safe to receive love from somebody, then
Mhm.
I'm going to be like this while he hugs me. And I'm going to be all tight and be like, okay, okay, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And then I'm not actually able to receive his love. Does that make sense? My body does not know that it's safe to receive that type of love because it wasn't the love that I grew up with. And that's what it means to not feel safe on a somatic level, even though intellectually I know I'm safe to receive a hug, but I'm actually not receiving that hug. Does that make sense? There's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this distance with it. So part of the practice of it is like we can know, again, information, I am safe to receive love from my husband, obviously, right? But unless we do the deeper work necessary to actually allow our body to relax in those moments and practice, like I just gave you an example of, hey, you got to learn how to receive. So if you don't know how to receive just while you're sitting there by yourself, you got no chance when your husband comes home from that work trip. Right?
Right,
And
right.
then all of a sudden he does something that doesn't quite meet your preference, and then you get in a fight and you think it's because you haven't seen each other in a while, but it's not about that. It was about, hey, you actually just were so uncomfortable that you made a big fight about nothing, right? So this is an example of how it shows up in everyday life.
You talked earlier about, I guess, growing up in like spiritually high controlled environments. Um, what does healthy spirituality feel like in the body compared to trendy or fear-based spirituality?
What a great question. I think that we live in a time where we get to have ownership of what it means to have a spiritual practice, what it means to be connected to the God that lives inside of you and the mystery of everything, of the universe. And we get to figure out what we want to call it. We get to figure out how we're wanting to practice it. We get to figure out what it gets to look like when it's integrated into our lives. Because we are a society that has, to some extent, rejected these traditional religions, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Okay. We have to recognize that we have to do our work. Then, if you're not going to adopt something that makes sense to you in the traditional sense, then you've got to do the work to figure out how does it live in your life and how are you going to bring it in. What I would say is that one, it would be maturity to know that it gets to be practiced to some capacity and to not be rejecting your spiritual self. You have a body, you have an intellect, you have an emotional self, and you have a spiritual self. And all of these four aspects of self need to be tended to some capacity. And if you're not tending to them, you will not be able to experience the thing that you're saying that you want to experience. And so there's an opportunity for us all to say, okay, I'm up for the task. I'm not subscribing to these religions. So great. I get to go ahead and figure out what is going to work for me. And I get to know that there is a beautiful power that lives inside of me. And I get to connect with the greater mystery as well of the universe. You can tap into it. What really the umbrella word that I call this is just wisdom. So you can just access wisdom. If you have the ability to practice reps with wisdom, say, okay, I'm going to get my reps with wisdom, just like I would doing a squat or a bicep curl at the gym. I need to be able to access wisdom because without wisdom, I am caught in the intellect and constantly being swept up by my emotions and my thoughts. So there's an opportunity to recognize that there's a practice to this. and we get to create the curriculum to the practice as well, which is actually more work than not. So if you can subscribe to something that makes sense to you, fantastic. But if you're not, then you got to figure out what is going to work for you. The thing that I was sharing in the beginning, however, is when you are not recognizing or someone is telling you that they have the wisdom and you don't, then you want to be very careful. Okay. So when someone else is saying, I have something and you don't have access to that, that is where we can get in trouble and we can hand our power over to something else.
Mhm, mhm. So I'm thinking about, again, the discourse around all these types of things we talk about, the self-help, the resolution, transformation. It seems to be it seems to be presented as something we're gonna fix. We're gonna fix
Yeah.
ourselves, quote unquote. Is this something we're trying to fix, or is this an ongoing, never ending, whether we want to admit it or not, journey?
Gosh, I have a lot of sympathy for people who are believing that there's something to fix. So let me just pause on that. There's nothing to fix because we're not broken. And part of what we get to recognize and get quiet with is maybe trying on the belief that there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to solve. And this is where I don't love personal development work because people are thinking that there's a finish line and there's something to put together and the puzzle pieces fell apart and now I'm trying to put myself back together. I hear that a lot. How can I got to put myself back together. I got to get where I was before. And that's not life. Life is a cycle of death, birth, rebirth. It's like over and over and over again. We have to be able to follow the laws of the universe. We are not outside of nature. And so when we are not recognizing this, we suffer. We have seasons of life, we have stages of life, we have reasons and stages and phases. And if we can recognize that, with every stage or phase you're in, what is life asking of you now? Is it winter? Is it spring? Is it summer? Is it fall? If it's fall, what gets to go away? If it's summer, what wants to be activated? We get to really recognize that we are not outside of that. And the more time you spend in nature, the more time you can connect with nature, you can see that you are a part of that. So there's nothing to fix. The tree outside has been shedding lots of leaves and now it's blooming little flowers. I'm not like, oh, we got to fix that. There's nothing to fix. So, my hope is that people can really recognize that for whatever season that you're in, can you be gentle with yourself? Can you be kind to yourself? Can you actually just learn to be with the season that you're in without trying to fix it or change it? And can you meet the moment?
Do you think healing can happen without fully addressing or resolving the past?
Okay, some people might not like this answer, but let's see what happens. I think that we don't need to go digging for all of our trauma. Okay. We don't need to go looking for it. Like whatever is present, it will come up. Okay. So I think that, when you're trying to be like, okay, I got to go, that happened. I know that happened to me, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I need to go deal with that. I got to go figure out, I got to go remember what happened. I got to go dig it all up so I can go heal it. I think that's a really big waste of time, if I'm honest with you. However, you might actually be experiencing something right now that because of the past, it's still affecting you. Okay, great. Now it's actually in the present moment. And if it's in the present moment, great. How can we go ahead and meet that and be with that and learn how to be with it differently? Meaning there might have been something that was needed that you did not get in that past experience that you can actually just give yourself now. And if you can give yourself that now, then it changes the cells in your body in the now, which actually changes the past experience. And then you can go create your future. And this is where I feel like deep work and future work meet. And so a practice that I think is really powerful is like, yes, you had a scene in your childhood that was super traumatic and people didn't give you the love and safety you want. You remember it and you still feel like you're experiencing that same feeling now, and you recognize the part as, and you're calling it fear or something like that, right? The best way to go ahead and heal, okay, or really what I would say is just to meet the moment, is to then say, well, what is that part needing? Oh, it's needing this, it's needing that. How can I actually, me, go ahead and give myself that thing that I needed in the moment? And then what happens is I'm able to essentially heal. Okay. I have been, and when I say heal, what I mean by that is I'm able to just meet the moment and be able to be with whatever comes up while I'm giving myself what I need.
Very interesting. I like that perspective because I even think back to my own personal journey and taking a good couple years to just be quiet, silent, and just work on my quote unquote work on myself or what I thought that was at the time in my late 20s. But I think in some ways, it wasn't productive because I felt like I ended up on this sort of spiral of feeling like I had to, like you said, revisit the past. Then I end up dwelling on that because I'm so upset about the mistakes I made. Then that becomes my current state on top of my current depression. And it was like this weird thing where I was thinking, how do I ever grow into the person I want to be if I can't truly forgive or accept my old self?
Mm,
So that is a really interesting perspective you just gave.
yeah. And I think that it's important to recognize that there could be things from the past that are still affecting us now. And if those want to be addressed, like fantastic, but we don't have to go looking for them. They're just actually here. Right? If there's a trigger, okay, it's here in the moment, and then we can go ahead and do that work. I do think it's powerful to do any visualization. Visualization is really important, I think, in somatic work. So any type of visualization that you can do with yourself or with a trained coach or therapist that allows you to have the practice of giving yourself and your parts what it didn't get that might still be affecting you now. That is a really wonderful practice. The visualization, like we talked about earlier, of those ideal parents, praising how far you've come, anything that you can imagine a scene for yourself or an image you create around, oh, I didn't get this as a kid. Let me go ahead and go pour that into me now so that I can change my beliefs about what's safe and not safe, what's love and what is love and what's not love, then fantastic. Because I think when it just stays in the mindset shift of like, we're going to break your limited beliefs and you're going to know what your thoughts are. And then you're going to recognize your thoughts lead to your emotions and your emotions lead to your actions and your actions lead to your outcomes. And you just stay in the theoretical frameworks and you don't actually do the practice of giving yourself what you need. It doesn't last. It's like a nice moment, aha moment, but it doesn't get integrated into your actual nervous system enough. So those somatic practices of imagery, of giving and pouring into yourself is what is important. And I will say this again, it takes 8 minutes a day. Okay. Just like see if that works for you. Just say, oh, at 8 minutes a day, I go and pour into myself in whatever capacity that I need. And wisdom will start to talk to you about what that actually needs to look like. It's actually in you to heal. It's in you to be at your optimal. Okay. It's not something that's far away that we need to get from the outside. So I think that when you can make that time for yourself, it really does change a lot.
So then when you're helping people with transformation work, um, do you look at it kind of like returning to yourself or reinventing yourself?
Um, Maybe it's a remembering. I think that there's it can be a lot of different things. Okay, let me go ahead and go back. Um, yes, we always have the opportunity to return or begin again. Okay, so sometimes we go off our path and we wander off. of where life is asking us to be. And then we get to return, right? We come back. And we can do that over and over and over again. And if we're honest with ourselves, we're probably doing that multiple times a day.
Right.
You're just kind of like you're feeling the bumps on the side of the road, and then you come back, and then you feel the bumps on the other side, and you come back. Right? We're all navigating. We're all returning over and over and over again. I think that we can always reinvent ourselves. But let me just see if I can describe what that means to me, and you can let me know what that means to you. I think that for my personal experience, I feel like I've lived already 10 lives. And so I feel like there's like a snake's skin that often happens. And maybe that's just the seasons. And then, just like I said with the trees, it loses all of the leaves. And then all of a sudden the leaves are there again, right? And it feels like a whole new tree again. So I do have this internal experience of a shedding and a rebirth, a shedding and a rebirth. And maybe, in my opinion, that is a reinvention.
Mhm.
And I do think that we can create our reality. People call this manifestation. People can call this, reinvention. They can call this what I call future work. Okay. But really at the core of it is to say, here's where I am and here's where I know I'm meant to go. And can I go ahead and bridge that gap? And knowing that anytime you're going to take another leap in your life to do something that you haven't done before, there are going to be obstacles that come in the way. And to recognize that those obstacles are actually not there to shut down that idea or to shut down that new reinvention or shut down that future self. It's actually to say, oh, you want this thing up here? Great, fantastic. I can't wait for you to elevate. And then life is just saying, here's the gap between where you are and where you need to be. And here's what I need you to do because this obstacle is going to stay there. But now you're just actually not bothered by it anymore.
Mhm.
And when people can recognize that anytime there's a reinvention wanting to happen for you, I want you to really know that there will be obstacles, and those obstacles are actually your friends. And it can get really fun in life to be like, oh, I can't wait to see those obstacles because then I know what I need to be doing different, right? So if you notice you're going along and then all of a sudden you're in procrastination, that's a saboteur for you. And you're like, boom, I'm not doing the thing I know I need to be doing. And procrastination's in the room. It's like, oh, that's what life is letting me know. My work right now is to work with procrastination. How can I? And then that's our work. So it points to what wants to be transformed. It points to something, it points to a new embodiment that gets to happen so that we can go ahead and elevate to where we want to be.
And I like that. I do like that a lot. I think similarly, like the idea of reinvention. I feel like that's how I would naturally kind of feel about my journey. However, I also feel like every time I've been reinvented, I feel more true to my core self as if it was like my past self. So I don't know if this thing has just been existing inside of me and it just took me a long time to really embrace her or be her. And I had to go through the obstacles to fully become her. So it's a weird distance between me feeling like, okay, this is who I've been all along or who I knew I was, but I allowed these circumstances to keep me from being that. And now that with a little more maturity in life and experiences and courage and all these things that come along the way, I finally feel like one thing I'm loving about getting older is you just care less and less about what other people think. Like I don't have time anymore. And so in coming to that, I feel like it's a reinvention, but it's also just me not caring anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I tend to call it a remembering because oftentimes when people are reinventing themselves, they're actually just tapping into their authentic self, like more of their authenticity, which will usually feel like, oh, of course, like this is me. This it feels like a remembering. So or a return, back to self. And so that space is beautiful. And I do think that, that breaking up with um flocking essentially being able to like, oh, I'm worried about what everybody else is going to think because I want to be this, I am this person, this is my authentic self, and maybe people aren't going to like it. Maybe it's people are going to be offended when I make a boundary, or maybe people are going to be upset at me if I'm this big or this bright or this healthy or this alive, whatever it is. And, usually that maturity with age is just like, oh my gosh, this is my life. If not now, when? Like, let's go,
Mhm,
you know? And it gets hopefully easier and easier every decade of our lives. But
mhm,
it
mhm.
is an important one and a really beautiful stage when I can see and watch clients shift into that at any age, by the way, because stages don't always correlate to ages, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just that opportunity to say, oh, okay, this is what life is asking of you. It's just like, okay, let's break up with needing everybody else's approval to be your authentic self.
Right. And in alignment with what we were talking about earlier, as far as people getting caught up in this idea of fixing something, I think there's a lot of people who also go into this, and again, you're waiting for that moment of like, now I'm the new me, or now I'm this. And so like, how is there a moment when we just know we're finally like living from alignment rather than survival, or is it
Mhm.
just kind of a gradual experience?
Yeah. Well, I'll offer something to your listeners. I created a assessment. It's called the Spiritual Heartbeat Assessment, and it's free. You can go. We'll give you the link, and you can share it with your guests. But essentially, if you go ahead and take this assessment, we did it with professors at Brown University, so it's research based, and it allows you to really understand what might be getting in the way of you having the experiences in life that you're wanting to have. So when you're thinking about, am I quote unquote doing it right? Is kind of like what I heard you say, or maybe you're feeling like maybe I'm doing it right, but maybe not. Like, I wonder what my blind spots are. I wonder what's getting in my way. This assessment will point you to that. And so you can take it. And if you take it when you think about the thing that you're wanting, or it could be a challenge or an issue or even an opportunity, but you kind of are answering the questions with what your issue is or challenge or opportunity, then it will point to the spiritual um, principle that might be wanting your attention in order for you to continue to grow, achieve, be, and become, and return back to self. Okay, that remembering that we're talking about. So maybe I'll offer that to your guests
Please, that'd
and
be great.
your as well as your audience and listeners, and they can check that out. But to answer your question, it's one of these things that when people don't know, okay, if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I'm actually my authentic self or not, or I don't know how to access my authentic self or not. What I would say is that you're most likely not taking enough time for yourself, and you're used to needing other people's opinions about how you're living. And I would say to take some time to get quiet with yourself, because you actually have the answer. You're not as confused as you think, okay?
Mhm.
Something is either uncomfortable or it's comfortable. And if you don't know if you're comfortable or uncomfortable, you just have to sit still long enough to figure it out. So take away the distractions for 3 months, get rid of TV, social media, and YouTube or whatever it is that you're on. I would even say stop reading books, stop listening to podcasts, stop all the input and start to be listening to what's happening here. 3 months detox of input essentially is a really great way for you to know what wisdom sounds like and whether or not you're on your right path. I have done this actually many times, by the way. I would never share something that I haven't done myself. Having an input detox, I think, is so important. If you can't do this for 3 months, just do TV and social, okay? If you're like, "No, I need to read books for work and listen to podcast," whatever, great. But even just TV and social for 3 months will change your life. And you will know what wisdom is and what to be doing and where to be going next. The voice is actually louder than you think, okay? Your intuition is so close. It's trying to tell you something, and all we have to do is just get quiet enough to listen to it.
And I just want to echo that. That is so important. And that's part of that time I told you I was working on my journey for a couple years straight. That was a big transition I needed to make was saying, I think I'm on information overload and I keep just consuming more that it's making me feel paralyzed on where to start. And then the comparison starts to other people's journeys, especially when you do that stuff on YouTube. So, yes, I just want to echo that. That is very important. So, because this is the resolution room, we have to end with a signature resolution question. So, what is one pattern you believe that more people need to pause long enough to notice within themselves before real transformation can begin?
I think the one that people often don't notice is the pattern of superiority, or what I call the betterment trap. And so, you've been doing spiritual work or personal development work for a long time. And then you feel this sense of accomplishment, you feel this sense of aliveness, you feel this sense of achievement, and maybe even integration and peace and new stages of consciousness available to you. And then you're looking out to other people and you're like, go get your shit together, or you're wanting them to be at your level, or you're needing them to be at a certain level for you to be friends or be a good partner or whatever it is. And what I will share is it's probably the pattern that is hardest to see, because you're right, like you are in an elevated state. But when you are then recognizing that you're judging others for not being able to join you, or even sometimes it comes out like, "Oh, I'm lonely." Like, "Oh, I nobody can meet me. Nobody can get it." It actually is just another mirror for you for your own work. And so it's a question to be asking of like, why am I needing this person to change for me to be feeling fulfilled and loved and joyful? And so everything is a mirror. And so at every level of elevation is an opportunity for more growth. So that pattern tends to be a little tricky. It's a hard one to notice unless somebody really is lovingly pulling a mirror out to you,
Right.
because it is true. People are in elevated states, and maybe they're looking at the people around them that haven't done the same work. But it still is coming back to, what is your reaction to that? What is your trigger to that? And that's then still our opportunity to elevate once again. So that's something that comes up at times.
You. So it's been such a pleasure talking with you today. Can you let everyone know what's next for you, or something, maybe something you're working on, and where everyone can follow you and your work?
Yeah, so I would love for people to check out my site. It's oliviafish.com, and you can find me everywhere at Olivia Fish. My name is spelled Olive, like olive, and then Yah, so it's spelled a little differently. And I have some fun things happening with what I call the core group. I have a men's core group and a women's core group, and it's just a beautiful space for us to be practicing together some of the things that we talked about today. I love doing these small group containers. And I also have a platform called Be Human Medicine, where I put a lot of my teachings into a platform, and we have community calls once a month. So that's another place at a very low cost that people can join my space and connect and get coaching from me in a group setting. So come check out all of the things that are offered right now.
Thank you so much, Olivia. It was a pleasure once again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Take care. If this conversation gave you something to reflect on, consider taking a moment to rate and subscribe. It helps more people find their way into these conversations. And if you'd like to bring a conversation like this into your organization or community, you can submit a speaking request. And if you prefer to start on your own, visit the Resolution Library for a collection of digital resources designed to help you put this into practice one step at a time. Access to our community, speaking requests, and online resources can be found at our website, linked in the show notes. Until next time, keep building in the quiet, because that's what will carry you forward.